Hey guys, welcome back to Listography. Today's episode is going to be a little different. Instead of counting down all of the records by one artist, we're going to be looking at a year instead. My 100 favorite albums from this year. This is a list I do every year. This just happens to be the first year I'm presenting it in video form. So just a couple things about this list. First of all, even though the video is titled The Best Albums of the Year, I do concede that these are only my favorite albums. There's really no such thing as a best albums list. These are just my opinions. Secondly, one criticism that my lists sometimes get is, why do 100? Like, how much can you possibly like your 100th favorite album of the year? Well, the answer to that is quite a bit. I listen to well over 200 albums every year. This year I listened to somewhere in the neighborhood of 240. Last year I listened to 320, so I'm down a bit from last year's numbers. But the fact is that I'm only listening to albums that I expect that I'll like. I'm not listening to submissions that are sent to me. I'm not listening to just random releases to review them. I'm only listening to things that I think I'm going to like. And I think out of the 240 that I listened to this year, I probably would only call maybe the bottom 5 or 10 of them bad albums, or albums that I got no enjoyment out of. So there's about in the neighborhood of 230 albums that I at least somewhat got a little bit out of. And so that leaves you with quite a bit to pick from. You take somewhere in the neighborhood of 40% of those or so, the top 40%, and that's what this list is. So even though 100 albums seems like a lot, I do really like all 100 of them, and I feel comfortable recommending all 100 of them. And lastly, I just want to say that this list is entirely made up of studio LPs, which means no live albums, no EPs, no compilations, no rarities or B-side collections, no soundtracks. This is just studio albums. All right, now before we get into the list proper, I just do want to give a couple shout-outs to a couple albums that I'm not including in the list for various reasons. The first being the album Zenith by Zyder Z. This is a record that was released this year, but was recorded in 1973 by a little-known band out of Memphis, originally from Louisiana. This was a band from the 70s that never got much traction. They had a little bit of a cult following. Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick was a big champion of this band. But this was a record that they recorded before their debut album, I believe. It was kind of made as a collection of demos. But this year it was reissued by Light in the Attic Records. I ended up deciding not to include it in the list just because it was so old. I know probably more than half of my list were recorded probably in 2017. So you don't have to record the album to be included in 2018. But I felt it was just a little difficult to compare it to the other albums, being that it was so old. But it is an excellent album. I highly recommend it. When I was toying around with including it on the list, I had it somewhere up in the top 20, so I like it quite a bit. Really good album, power pop, but with some hard rock and progressive elements thrown in. So yeah, check out Zyder Z. And the other thing I wanted to mention before we get into the top 100 is the Boy Genius EP. Not included because it's an EP, but it is a fantastic little record. Kind of a super group of sorts between Julian Baker, Lucy Dacus, and Phoebe Bridgers. 6 songs included, all of them fantastic. The writing's great, the singing's great. If there had just been maybe 2 or 3 more songs on this thing, it probably would have qualified as an LP, and I'd probably have it in my top 10 pretty easily, I would think. Alright, so now let's get into it. The top 100, I'm not going to speak a lot about these, there's a lot to go through. Just the fact that they're on the list gives them my stamp of approval. I'm not going to go into a big review on each one. But let's get started. Number 100, going to be Wide Awake by Rayland Baxter. This is the 3rd album by the Nashville pop, rock, and country singer-songwriter. In at number 99 is going to be the album Jassbusters by Connan Mockasin. He's a New Zealand native. This is his 3rd album, which is accompanied by an absurdist art house film, which admittedly I did not see. It's a kind of a lo-fi, funky jazz, soft rock kind of sound. Number 98 is going to be Look Now, the new Elvis Costello record. This is the latest album from the legendary singer-songwriter, and this finds him in his pop songcraft mode, co-writing 3 songs here with Burt Bacharach, 1 with Carole King. At number 97, it's going to be I'll Be Your Girl by the Decemberists. This is the synth-heavy 8th album by the Portland indie darlings. Somehow, if you aren't familiar with the Decemberists, I would not recommend starting with this album, but for longtime fans, this album does provide a number of quality additions to their songbook. At number 96, it's going to be Hell On by Neko Case. Again, the 8th solo album by the sometimes new pornographer. It's far from her best, but again, it delivers some great tracks and displays her excellent singular voice. At number 95, it's going to be The Hex by Richard Swift. So this is the final posthumous album by the indie rock stalwart who did stints in the Shins and the Black Keys. He was a revered producer and collaborator. And this record finds him dealing with some heavy subject matter, including the death of his mother and sister, a broken finger that almost ended his career, and the alcoholism that ultimately contributed to his death at age 41. But he does so with grace and humor, and it's a very good record. At number 94, going to be No Recover by Eric Bachmann. This is a solo album from the former Archers of Loaf and Crooked Fingers member. His last solo album had what is possibly my favorite song of the last decade on it. This album doesn't really have any tracks that stand out to be quite as strong as that one, but it is a good release in its own right. At number 93, Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino by the Arctic Monkeys. This is the band's 6th album overall, and the follow-up to their massively successful 5th album, AM. Rather than trying to repeat that album, they turn in a moody album with very heavy on keyboards and strings, which really highlights Alex Turner's excellent lyrics. At number 92, it's going to be Bottle It In by Kurt Vile. This is Kurt's 7th album, excluding several EPs and his collaborative album from last year with Courtney Barnett. Kurt is kind of known for his slacker persona, lazy vocal delivery, but in fact he's a really great singer-songwriter, great guitarist, and he really stretches out on this record, lets the music take him wherever it will. There are 4 songs here that are over the 7.5 minute mark. 2 of those are over the 10-minute mark. So it's quite a long album, but very good and very interesting. At number 91, the album Trickster Blues by R.F. Shannon. This is the follow-up to last year's Jaguar Palace. This is an album of bluesy desert psych rock. At number 90, the album Phantastic Ferniture by Phantastic Ferniture, the debut album from the garage indie trio fronted by Julia Jacklin. At number 89, Elastic Days by J. Mascis. This is the 3rd proper solo album from the Dinosaur Jr. frontman. Like all of his other solo albums, this is a largely acoustic album, but there are drums, which are played by Jay, and electric guitars solos all over this record. Number 88, the self-titled album by Superorganism. This is the debut album from the 8-piece London-based collective. This is a super fun record, stuffed to the gills with weird samples and wobbly synths. It's all topped off by the deadpan, unimpressed vocal delivery of Orono Noguchi. At number 87, the album Clean by Soccer Mommy. Soccer Mommy is the project of Sophie Allison, and Clean is her first proper studio album following the home-recorded 2017 release Collection. This is pretty straightforward indie guitar rock. At number 86, the album Dive by the band Talkers. So Talkers is actually from my hometown of Pittsburgh, and they are fronted by a friend of mine named Caleb. And I met Caleb when I used to work in a music store, and he would come in and buy CDs from the store. It's been really interesting to watch his music develop over the years, from early bands of his to a couple solo releases, and now this band. This is by no means a charity selection on my part. This album really delivers the goods at a high level and sits very rightfully among all of these other excellent releases from this year. So kudos to Caleb and Talkers. At number 85, the album 1-2 Kung Fu by Boy Azooga. This is the debut album from the indie pop group helmed by Davey Newington, and it shows a very wide range of influences. At number 84, the album Yolk in the Fur by Wild Pink. This is the sophomore album from Wild Pink, who take their 70s songwriter influences and mold them into something akin to the war on drugs. At number 83, the album If Only There Was a River by Anna St. Louis. This is the debut full-length album from the Kansas City-born folk singer. This record's produced by Kyle Thomas of King Tuff and Kevin Morby, and features Justin Sullivan of Night Shop and Oliver Hill of Pavo Pavo. At number 82, the album is Rebound by Eleanor Friedberger. This is her fourth solo album from the Fiery Furnace's frontwoman. Not my favorite of her solo albums, but a strong release nonetheless. And at number 81, going with In the Rainbow Rain by Okkervil River. The Will Sheff-led Texas indie outfit returns with their 9th LP. In the Rainbow Rain is probably the group's most stylistically varied album to date. So that does it for the first part of my list. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the rest of the list. Please, if you like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit like, make sure you click on the bell for notifications, and most importantly, comment below. Obviously, you don't know what's coming next, so you can't really tell me what I left off the list yet, but tell me if some of these should have maybe been higher or not included at all, and feel free to tell me what you were into this year, maybe your top 10 or so, however many albums you'd like to let me know about, please do, and thank you for watching.